Welcome to the Spotlight Photographics webinar tutorial video series. Today we'll be speaking about the Panoramics PSD template set, in particular the Equalizer template, which is located on the Panoramics Volume 2. This can be purchased on our website at www.spotlightphotographics.com. So let's get started. When you pull up the template, you'll notice that it already has sample images on them. This way you can figure out exactly where you would like to put your images when you drag them in, and also give you a good idea of the size in which we designed the template to work with. Of course, you can use this template in any way that you like. This is just the way it will open up. This also allows you to print samples, which you're free to do with this template. So to get started here, we'll notice that we have a lot of different layers over in the Layers palette. The layers are labeled. You have a team layer, a team shadow, which we'll get into a little bit later, your team name, the right and left equalizers, the front light beam, which is this light beam here. You have lines, which are these squiggly lines in the back, and you also have lines in the front. You have light bursts, which obviously are here. You also have ground textures, panel textures, stadium lights, a bottom shadow, a background color, which is where you'll actually be changing most of the background color in this panoramic template, and you also have a stadium graphic in the back, and then you finally have the background. If you'd like to look at these individually, you can always turn off the layers by clicking the eye on the left, and this will give you a good idea of what you're looking at when you are trying to change something in the template. Of course, if you'd like to turn something off, for example, if you had this template and for some reason the client or yourself, you just didn't want these equalizer bars here, you can turn them off by simply just turning off the eye. That gives you a different look. In the same token, you can also come down and you can turn off the panel texture if you didn't like that panel texture that was back there. So as you can see, it's very customizable when you're working with this. You have a lot of different options. All of our templates are this way. That way you can really make them the way you want them. So to get started, we're actually going to bring in a football team that's blue so that we can show you exactly how quick and easy it is to change this over. So first we're going to get rid of our team layer and our team shadow, because those are the two layers that are for the team, and we're just going to delete those layers. Now before we bring anything in, I'm not going to click on anything else. That way the next thing I drag in is going to land exactly where those players were. If you come over here and click, we'll say down here, the team when you bring it in is going to come in right here. So you want to leave it where it was when you got rid of those teams. Now this works again on everything that we do. We suggest that you either leave the team that's in there already there, or just when you delete it, don't click away from the spot that you were in. So we're going to bring in some files. These files were already clipped out. We used our extraction service, which you can use on our website. It's $2 an individual and $3 for a team. And we're just going to drag this team in. Simple drag and drop. In Photoshop 6 and 5, you actually have to rasterize these images once they come in, which I'll show you how to do if you're wanting to edit them in any way. So right now we're just going to continually click. I grabbed them all out of a folder and just drug them into the window. In lower versions of Photoshop, like CS4 and lower, you'll actually, when you drag into Photoshop, they'll become other tabs across the top. In that instance, you'll want to do a different import to actually place them into this. So you can see this is how I brought them in, and I'm actually going to now go ahead and delete these and show you the other way. That's the way I like to bring them in, but you can always go to File and Place. Again, that's File, Place, and that will all get you to where you want to go. And we're just going to go to the files. I've got them in the folder here. And you can see we had the original files here that were pre-clipped, and then we have these files. So if you want to do it this way, you can only bring one in at a time. That's why I like the other way. But if you're in a lower version of Photoshop and you don't want a whole bunch of tabs across the top, this way will actually bring in the file exactly the same way. But I'm going to just go back to where we had them brought in the first time. Now, if you notice, they're all too big. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the very top picture here. I'm going to hold my Shift key on a PC, I believe it's the same on the Mac, and then come down and click on the bottom picture. That's going to highlight all of those layers. At this point I'm going to go a Control T or Command T for free transform. I'm going to hold the Shift and the Alt key. The reason I do this is the Shift key, I'll show you the Shift key by itself, will actually, when you grab the corner, will keep it in proportion. If you don't hold the Shift key, this is what will happen. You can accidentally stretch or shrink the images not in proportion. So by holding the Shift key down, you can see it keeps it in proportion. Now if you notice it's dragging from right to left the way I'm doing it right now. By holding the Alt key at the same time as holding the Shift key, it actually will shrink them all the way down proportionally towards the center. It's a much quicker way to shrink items. So right now we're just going to shrink them down to be about this big. Put them on the floor, and we're going to click the checkbox to apply. And at this point all we need to do is now just move them around to where we like them. Spread them out. Now you'll notice that right now I'm not really paying much attention to how big they are. If you notice, they came in at different sizes. Right now I'm just wanting to get a good just a good balance across the photo. And of course, if you would like to spend more time on this, you can. I'm just going to do this the quick and easy way. And of course I'm Control T-ing or Command T on each one of these layers to get them to where they want to go. Just get them in a decent size. Now if you shoot these all the same height, meaning that your camera doesn't move when you're taking the photos, you will not have to do this when you bring them in. They should all be the same size, the way they should have been. The taller kids will be taller than the shorter kids, and you won't have to generalize their size. So right now we're just Command T or Control T and get them all roughly the same size. And for the sake of time, we're just going to pretty much stop right here and just go with what we have. Okay, so now we've got our team lined up. At this point, obviously, they're not red. They don't have any red, so we're going to change the background color. So we're going to, on the equalizer, we come down to the bottom layer, and you'll see you have a background color layer. At this point, you'll also see a color overlay option down here underneath it. Now, I use 3 different types of color changes. I either use shapes, I use color overlays, or I use adjustment layers. In this factor, we're going to be using a color overlay. I'm just going to double click on color overlay. That's going to bring up my layer style palette, and I am going to click on the color, which brings up my palette. Now you can pick a color. If you already know the color code of the team, you can put it here, or you can simply, for the sake of speed, just click on the jersey and it will automatically change the color, and you just drag it around until you like how it looks. And then we'll just hit OK and OK. So now we have this color. Now in the equalizer template, you also have these lines. You have lines that are in the back, and you have lines that are in the front. Now these are automatically set to red. If you want to change these colors, you can simply desaturate the layer. This is just done by Control-Shift-U, and that's going to unsaturate it, or desaturate it. And you can do the same thing for the front lines. And then what you can do at this point is right-click and say Color Overlay in the blending options. Blending options, Color Overlay. And we're just going to do an overlay. This is how you add color to a lot of things. I'm going to change it to be blue. And sometimes the color overlay doesn't work as an overlay function. In fact, I believe that it's not liking a lot of this. can see it's putting a shine on the floor. If you change different overlay features, you're going to have this issue. A lot of times what I've noticed is with these lines, if you don't want them red, you just kind of keep them as a gray color. The other thing that you can do, and we're going to Control Z this back out to being red, is you can add an adjustment layer. Now the reasons I don't have these changing is on this is so that you can do different things to these lines. If you come up here to the lines category, you can come up to your adjustments, and you can say hue and saturation, and then hold your Alt key and put it between the layers, and it's going to mask that right onto this layer. If you notice, I already have that done for the front light beam up here, but that's how you get that effect, is you hold your Alt key, put it in between, and then you drag that on here. And then at this point you just drag this beam across, and you'll see that the colors are changing. So now we've got it on a blue. Now what we can do is, we know this one back here is going to be the same as this one, so we can remember that's a -109. And then we have the other lines at the top right here, and we're going to do the same thing in a hue and saturation adjustment layer. We're going to merge that into the lines layer, and then we're just going to do the same thing, and we're just going to drag it. So now we've got blue, and at this point we've got those two there. Now we still have this front light beam, which has that same adjustment layer on there that we added to these other layers, and we can just drag this to be blue. Now at this point we've got everything the way we like it. Not very long to make that happen. And to change the text, we're just going to use our text tool. We're just going to highlight the name of the team, and we're going to say that this is the Barbers Hill football. And that's it. At this point you just save it as a JPEG, send it to your printer, or banner printer if you're printing a banner, and you're all set. Now if you want to go a little bit farther than this, and you want to add some some shadows, all you do is take your individual layers that you're wanting to make a shadow with. If these all came in at the same time, it would be the same situation. It's a little bit more difficult when you have people standing sideways, but we'll take this person for example. That's layer 0958. We're just going to duplicate that layer by doing Control Z. It's Control J, I'm sorry. And we're just going to take the bottom layer, and we're going to Control T, and then we're going to right click and say flip vertical. This is going to do an inverted selection of that person. Now we're just going to drag this down, match it right up with the feet, apply that, and then we're going to come over to our opacity, and we're going to just lower the opacity of this layer, and then finally just take our eraser tool and make it as soft as possible, a little bit larger than that, and then we're just going to drag and fade up that picture. So as you can see, we'll zoom into this person here. He has a shadow coming from his feet. Very quick, very easy, and we can just repeat this across the way. If you want to do them all together, we can do like what we did before. I'm going to go ahead and remove the one we did. This one right here. Now remember what I said, in Photoshop 5 and 6 they come in as smart objects, and you'll see this over here on the right. So what I'm going to do before I edit any of these, I'm just going to select all my layers. I'm going to right click and say rasterize. This is going to allow me to edit these. It's going to allow me to change lightness and darkness of the photos, do some kind of color editing if I needed to. You can't do that when they first come in as smart objects, so you just make sure you rasterize those layers, and that box will be removed from their icons over here. So at this point you're just going to grab all of these layers, you're going to duplicate them just like we did before, so you can see we have all these copies, and then we're just going to select the bottom copies, which were the first set because the second set came up on top. We're going to select them all, Control T, right click, flip vertical, and you have the whole team vertical, and we're just going to drag them all down. Now if you notice, everybody's different, because as I said before, when they turn sideways and they're in different spots on the template, they may not line up all right. So I'm just going to line up one of them here in the center, right here. I'm just going to apply this, and then at this point I'm just going to bring them up and we'll get into this guy here in a second. Just adjust all these different layers. Bring them all up to the people. And now we have them all there. So at this point I'm going to grab all the files again and lower the opacity of them all. And there's our shadow. Now, to do these ones that you have that are a little bit off, all I'm going to do is duplicate this shadow layer and bring it up to here. Now if you notice, you've got a really bad double thing going on. So at this point you have to use a little bit more editing, and we're just going to take the eraser and just erase around the area that we know we don't want, and now you've got your shadow up here. We'll come around. This one looks pretty good except for the leg here, so I'm going to bring him down. It's not the same one. There we go. Okay, here we are. It's this one. We're just going to bring this one down here, and I'm just going to grab my marquee tool and just grab his leg and bring it up. Now, I'm not worried so much about what's going on right down here because we're going to fade this up. So the fact that his leg is missing right here is not a big deal to me right now. I'm just going to come across here and see what else I have. I've got this leg right here that's not right, so I'm just going to grab it, make sure I'm on the right layer, bring his foot down. Same thing over here, we're just going to bring his foot up. And we're going to do another one right here. Make sure we're on that layer. Bring that foot up. Do this layer here. Bring that foot up. Now if you notice, you can go a little bit farther with these, but for the most part your customers are probably going to be pretty happy with the way this is. But if you want to, you can actually come in here and you can take these layers and you can do a Control T again, and you can do a skew. And at this point when you do skew, you can grab these corners and you can bring them up, and you can kind of skew the feet a little bit. That way they line up more and they look more like they're supposed to, being flat on the floor. But for the most part we're good here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab all of my bottom files again, and just making sure I have the right one. Okay, and we're just going to grab all of our bottom files here again, and I'm going to merge them. This way up my shadow is completely together. As you can see, they're all now one subject. And we'll just take our eraser now and do like we did before, make it a pretty good size, and we're just going to drag across the bottom and slowly come up so that it's a nice fade into the floor. And there's how you do your reflections on the floor. At this point you are done, and now you can save the file and send it to your printer. Thank you very much for attending this webinar tutorial video on the Equalizer. Again, this is located on our website and is available for purchase in the full set of the Panoramics Volume 2. Thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you again.